Welcome, everybody. A funny thing happened to me on the way to this conference. I'm a great advocate of cannabis. I use it every day. I probably use about 700 milligrams a day to make me functional. I've gotten off of 6 pharmaceuticals. So I was on holidays with my wife in Florida, and I flew in for this. I got in Monday evening. I went home. I live with my family, my grandkids, my son, his wife, 5 dogs on 150 acres of forest with beavers, bear, wolves, coyotes, and those damn turkeys. So I get off the airplane, I'm sitting with my family, and my 4-year-old grandson says, "Grandpa, your face is melting." I'm going, "What are you talking about?" My daughter-in-law looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, you're having a stroke, Dad." I said, "What?" I don't know if you notice, I seem like sometimes I talk like a cartoon character. So Monday night, I was having a stroke. Off to the hospital I go. 2 hours later, the doctor comes in and says, "Mr. Routhier, you're not having a stroke. You've got Bell's palsy." I jump out of the bed, I give her a hug and a kiss, and I say, "Thank you." And she goes, "I've never seen anyone so excited to have a problem." I mean, the option is stroke, or I walk around with a funny face for 3 to 6 months. I'll take that any day over a stroke. And speaking about our children, this is really what this should all be about, and our grandchildren. It's not really about us. It's about your grandchildren and what they're going to do. The option when your grandson or granddaughter comes to you and says, "Grandfather, what should I do in life?" Well, you've got natural resources. Oh no, we're kind of using those up. That's not a great option maybe anymore. What I want you to do, open your hearts, open your minds, think for the next generations. This train has left the station. Do you know how many millionaires and billionaires have been made in the last 6 years? And everybody here, this is 6 years later, and you're looking into it. This is a new economic engine. Don't lose it. Don't squander everybody's future. You can get around whatever the reasons are. You don't want this in your community. You need this in your community. Can you imagine saying to your grandson or your granddaughter, "You know what? We need lawyers. We need PhDs. We need people to formulate products. Damn, we need trimmers. We need packagers. We need CEOs." Do you know what people get paid to run these companies? And all that income, not only does it stay in your community, but it keeps your children and your grandchildren in your community. I live in the woods for a reason. I see what goes on in cities. I don't want any part of it. I don't want my grandkids to be part of it. It's a safe haven for them. And guess what? They've got a bright future. I run a number of companies. They're all going to work for me eventually. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Your kids go to university, get a PhD, and guess what? I'm going to go home and I'm going to work for our community. That's how I want you to look at this. Please do that. Now, a little bit of a commercial. I'm George Routhier. I'm the CEO of PipeDreemz. If you haven't heard of us, you haven't dug deep enough into this industry. I brought a booklet along for you. They're at the front desk. This is an abridged guide to the regulations. Instead of reading 300 pages, you can read this and you'll just about be an expert on it. You want to do what? Turn to that page. It'll tell you what you need to do and you can't do, or what else you need to do the next step. That's my gift to you. I didn't bring tobacco. I'm honored to be able to speak to all of you people. I know how valuable your time is. I know how hard you work for your people. So if I start drooling or lisping a little bit, please forgive me. One other interesting point. You know how many times children smile a day? About 450 times. Adults, about 35 times. So me, I'm handicapped in the smile department because I only got half a smile now. So I got to smile at least 66 times a day just to make my 33. Remember, smile, it's contagious. So what we're going to do is we have a lot of expertise here. We're going to give them each 10 minutes, plus or minus a couple, because they have slide decks. I hope they're going to impart the value of what they've gone through so you understand some of the idiosyncrasies, some of the aha moments, and some of the, oh geez, we really shouldn't have done this, so don't you do it. And at the end of this, you'll probably have more questions. I'm probably the most accessible CEO in the cannabis industry, and that's by design. We build relationships. We're here for the long haul. You have questions, you call me. You want to talk to me, come and see me, I'll give you my business card. The calls are always free, people. You need the knowledge, we have it, we're willing to share it with you. Because it's about knowledge transfer. It's about technology transfer to make yourself and your community self-sufficient. One micro grow, $1.8 million a year. Doesn't that get you excited? It should. We can teach you how to even make more. That will be our gift to you instead of tobacco. So on to our panel. Let's start here. Maybe introduce yourself, go through your short presentation. And I'm hoping we'll have some time left over at the end to take questions from people in the audience. Thank you so much for your time.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for inviting me once again to talk to you about Seven Leaf. It actually has been quite a path, even since the last time I presented at Tsutina in November. So much has happened to Seven Leaf, and specifically in terms of good things. And that's something today that I want to share with you, although George wants me to really condense 5.5 years of blood, sweat, and tears into a matter of 10 minutes. I think what we're going to do instead is focus on really the highlights and the progress and the potential that Seven Leaf represents. Joining me today to actually tell the Seven Leaf story and walk you through our roadmap is Zach Bonaparte. He is Seven Leaf's Director of Cultivation, and he is also a Mohawk from Akwesasne. Before I hand the mic over to Zach to actually give you a more specific, drilled down overview of what the cultivation process and side of this industry looks like, what I thought I would do for those of you who weren't able to join us in Calgary in November is provide you with a brief overview of Seven Leaf. And to do that, I'd like to begin with explaining who we are. Next slide, I'm sorry. You got that, or do I have that? There we go. We are, as of September 21st, 2018, Canada's first First Nations licensed producer. We are 100% Indigenous owned, and we are located physically on the Akwesasne Mohawk territory. For those of you who are not familiar with Akwesasne, it is a dynamic community, both socially, economically, politically, and geographically. As you will note from the map, we have various jurisdictions highlighted in various colors. Gawanoge, which is Cornwall Island, is actually where the facility and plant is located. The areas in purple are actually that portion of our community and territory that is located in Quebec, and then in the orange area, that portion in territory, or portion of our community and territory that is physically located in New York State. Gawanoge is located in Ontario. All one community, all one people. Varying jurisdictions, varying governmental entities and bodies who oversee regulatory and political affairs for the community. Now, with respect to Seven Leaf, by way of background, actually began as a conversation. Began as a dialogue between Mohawk business people, Mohawk like-minded entrepreneurs who said, here is an opportunity. We heard that word time and time again today and over the course of the past year and several years. There's opportunity here. Well, we took that to heart, and we really wanted to know what that opportunity could look like for us. So for a group of Mohawks, having a conversation across the table, we came to the conclusion very quickly that in order to get this off the ground, what we first would have to do was begin the conversation with our community members. We wanted to first tap into their thinking, their mindset, their opinions, and their overall feelings regarding cannabis and cannabis within our community. So what we did even prior to submitting our application to Health Canada was we began having those conversations. And it was in the form of a grassroots effort conducted by only a few of us. Really, 2-3 individuals knocking on doors, asking them if they would allow us to come in, sit at their kitchen table, and have the conversation. And thankfully for us, more doors were open to us than were not. And after doing this for several months, we then decided for ourselves that this was something that actually, not only did we want to do it, we could do it, and we were going to do it. So after also having conversations not only with our community members, but with our council members, and opening and beginning that dialogue with them. As I think Rob had identified earlier in his presentation, these are critical and essential elements. These are components to the progress, to the path, if this is an area that you decide you want to venture into on behalf of your community, or in the event that you're able to do that as an individual. You have to begin to talk about it. You have to begin to collect and invest in the process as it relates to your people, and to hear and address what their needs are, their concerns are, and value what you're hearing from them. Now, on the heels, again, of having those conversations, we determined that it was appropriate for us to go ahead and pursue the submission of a federal license with Health Canada. We did that in May of 2014. We are standing here February 2019, almost 5 years later, as a licensed producer, as an Indigenous licensed producer, as a licensed Indigenous producer located on territory. That is a big deal, and it is a huge accomplishment, and we're incredibly proud of the efforts of the foresight that those individuals had in the early days, but also more importantly, the team that we've compiled since that time. It's truly a testament to fortitude and to industry and to entrepreneurialism and to support. And thankfully, with our council's guidance along the way. They've served as our touchstone, and they continue to do so, and we're thankful for that. Now, with respect to there's one last point, and it's a critical point, and it's really our proudest point, and that is that 98% of the employees at Seven Leaf come from Akwesasne. We have 98% Mohawk employment. To date, we have just under 40 people who are employed at Seven Leaf in the areas of quality assurance, in the areas of construction, administration, cultivation, and those teams continue to grow. Trying to get my next slide. Our path. I need to emphasize that this is our path. This was Seven Leaf's decision and determination that this was something appropriate for us. All of you who are considering and weighing the pros and cons of pursuing some type of business venture in the cannabis space have to take all of these unique factors into consideration as it relates to your community, to your needs, your concerns, your business model, and you have to decide for yourself what is right and perhaps what is not right. For us, the decision was made in 2014 to move forward, and that has worked out for us, but that's not to say that production is the avenue for every community. Now, as part of the grassroots education efforts, that's something that continues today. That's something that was initiated on day one. It continues today, and we've done so in the form of various community meetings, grassroots efforts, knocking on the doors, speaking to elders groups, youth groups, et cetera. But while we were pursuing and garnering that support at the organic level, we also had the practical matter of financing this project. How are we going to do that? It had always been our original intention that this was going to be not only an Indigenous-owned operation, but that investors and the growth of this company was also going to be First Nations. That is something that is unique to Seven Leaf in the fact that we have been able to actually generate the financial foundation and support necessary to allow for our growth. And most significantly, all of our funding has come from First Nations, either in the form of individual business people within various First Nations communities, or in the form of other groups, financial groups, who are First Nations oriented, First Nations identified. For us, that was critical. It was critical because, again, the vision began as this was going to be an operation that would be someday, hopefully, First Nation seed to sale. And in order to be true to that intention objective, we've tried very hard that at every step of the way that we're ensuring that Indigenous relationship serves as the very foundation for this project. Now, the initial and subsequent capital that was raised was actually generated locally from Akwesasne business people. That is, again, something that's very unique to Seven Leaf. Not every community will have those opportunities afforded to them. For us, it's something that we were able to do in a piecemeal fashion and continue our construction and our expansion plans pursuant to the financial constraints that we were facing. But at the end of the day, we've been able to actually get to the point we are at with that funding, and it's allowed us a great deal of flexibility in terms of our growth, our development, and our future. The Seven Leaf facility. This is our pride and joy. We actually are comprised of two buildings. We have the initial building, which is Building A, and that is the facility that is currently licensed by Health Canada. It consists of 84,000 square feet, and actually what we've done is we've retrofitted a water bottling plant that was in operation just over 15 years ago and ceased operation just over 10 years ago. So what we are anticipating is that the construction for Building A will be completed in the fall of this year, 2019. Once that facility is fully operational, we're anticipating that it will be able to generate 11 million grams annually. Now, without missing a beat, we're actually planning on moving immediately into the construction and retrofitting of Building B. Now, Building B is actually twice the size of our existing facility and actually has 144,000 square feet to work with. We're anticipating that construction will begin in mid-2019 to be completed by mid-2020. The canopy space for the total facility, including both buildings, is expected to be in excess of 100,000 square feet. What that translates into is a production estimate of just about 39 million grams per year. That's a lot. And again, coming from a First Nations community, being able to say that, having plans for extraction facilities and expansion and growth in those areas is really a fantastic thing for us to be able to do. Now, again, because I can't take up too much time with respect to our story, I'd like to focus on just providing you with a summary and some recommendations. For those of you, again, who are weighing whether or not this is an area you want to be in on behalf of yourselves or on behalf of your community. One, you need to identify your business model and what those objectives relative to that model look like. In other words, are you looking to be in the medical area, or are you actually looking to be in the recreational? Perhaps it's a combination of both. But that's something really I think will help gauge you in the development of your business plan, knowing that as early on as you possibly can. Also, whether or not your market really is going to be geared towards your community and be local in nature, or whether or not you're looking to take your business national and possibly even internationally. As I mentioned earlier, community education, community education, community education ultimately will result in community acceptance and support. I cannot stress that enough. We did the work, we invested the time and the energy, and we have received the support tenfold in return from our community. That is tremendous. And again, we are very unique, and this is our story. And perhaps, there are other variables in other communities that will not make it, will not end up with the same result. But it's something that you have to commit yourselves to early on in the process. Have the dialogue and be as transparent as you can. Now, a respectful, constant, consistent, and open communication relationship with your governing entity, whether it's a council, whether it's a traditional council, whatever form that governmental entity takes, it's necessary for you to have the relationship with them. You need to gain the trust collectively and between yourselves in order for this to actually be the success that you're hoping it will be. Critical, you need to secure the funding resources for your project. That goes without saying. For us, we were fortunate enough to identify private sourcing, but that certainly may not be a possibility or a likelihood for many communities, and you may want to consider then financing options. And we do have various groups who work specifically within First Nations communities and business development spaces to help you make that consideration a reality. Also for us, again, what was imperative is that we had the consulting assistance of individuals such as George and other highly respected consultants in various aspects of the industry. And we were able to tap into that early on, which really guided our progress. And finally, be patient. This is not a fast-moving train. Although there's a lot of talk, people mention that we may have missed the boat, or maybe it's not for us at this point in time. It can be. But you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to work through all of those obstacles. In 2014, even earlier, Seven Leaf was it was a conversation piece. It was a dream. That was Seven Leaf then. This is Seven Leaf today. So if we do have a couple of moments, I'd like to hand the mic over to Zach, and he just has a few words with respect to cultivation specifically. We'll make it brief. I just think that it is important to hear from him, about the actual growing of these amazing plants. Thank you.
All right, I'll make it quick here. Our grow actually began in mid-December. We got our first cutting plants in, and with the granting of our Health Canada license came 3,000 square feet in flowering space. So we recently actually added one more room for our mothers, and are awaiting licensing for a pretty awesome showpiece of a veg room, two-tiered, double-stacked LEDs. The future of cultivation. Couple interesting things. The building, moving into a facility this size and growing at this scale, it's new to a lot of people, myself included. And tuning in this building, it's as much of a living thing as the plants are. So that's been an interesting experience. With all the delays in construction and licensing and things that just pop up, we finally got our first flowering batch set to go, and we're excited to say that we're expecting our first harvest on 4/20 of this year. Currently we're growing 6 strains, but we do have intentions of adding more genetics to our library through both breeding and working with other reputable breeders. Right now we have about 10 members on our cultivation team, and we actually have a lot of cross-training going on so that people in quality assurance or facilities, they can actually jump in and help deal with the day-to-day tasks, which are a lot at this size. We're actually adding 6 to 8 more cultivators in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and I expect that number to double or triple by the time we fill out this first building. And once we get to building 2, I'd say well over 100 cultivators just in that department. That's not including quality assurance staff, facilities staff, cleaning teams. There's a lot of opportunity for employment with 7-Leaf. So I've definitely noticed that networking is a huge part of this industry. Going to events like this, reaching out to various consultants, and even educational institutions, research institutions. There's a lot of people out there willing to help you out on as far as cultivation and helping you build out your facility. And at the end of the day, it is farming, so basically anything that can go wrong will. And it's really fun to be a part of it, and it's never a dull moment, that's for sure. And that's about it. I'll make it quick. Thanks.
It's been great working with 7-Leaf over a long period of time, and hopefully that relationship will continue. Now we'll have our next speaker who's going to share his experiences with you. If you'd like to come in.
Good afternoon. My name's Ernie Daniels. I'm President and CEO of First Nations Finance Authority. We actually operate under the First Nations Fiscal Management Act. So we are First Nation managed membership organization. It's total First Nation 100%. The main objective of the authority is to find the best financing terms for First Nations as possible. So we work with First Nation bands only. That's what we're restricted to under the Act. We have approximately about pretty close to 90 First Nations that have become members of FNFA. It's quite a process to get through to get financing from us, and there's one element that takes the longest, and it's getting your name added to the schedule with the federal government. I don't know why that takes that long, but it's the longest part of the process. And to date, there's about 270 First Nations that have scheduled under the Act. So we've actually lent, to date, we've lent out over $600 million to First Nation bands across the country for various types of projects. We've done 4 projects with 4 First Nations for cannabis and throughout different parts of the country. It's kind of amazing. Because a lot of what's required for these type of projects is equity, cash equity. It's pretty hard to get. And so what we've seen is in terms of deals that are coming and opportunities that are coming to us are fairly complex. There's an equity component to it, and there's a limited partnership, there's ownership of buildings and who has a license, and those type of things are really critical. So what we've done is we've identified some of the risk elements to some of these projects. And we've come up with, and we actually, what we do is we work with each individual First Nation, and we make sure that they understand what the risks are if they're getting into a partnership agreement. And so once they're familiar with that and they're accepting, we move forward to financing the projects. Just a bit about what we do in terms of where we get our financing. We actually are rated by Moody's and S&P. So we actually access the bond market directly. So what that means is that we have a really low cost of financing that we can provide to our members. So every member every First Nation that becomes a member has the same financing rate that we have. And it's how you determine how much you can borrow is based on the revenues that you have as a First Nation, and First Nations have different revenues. So we end up with a borrowing capacity estimate, and then you move forward. It's pretty easy once you get past getting scheduled and working with us. We don't provide any costs, any fees for financing, so it's relatively inexpensive. We don't take collateral over your assets because they're usually situated on reserve, or if not, if you're taking an equity position in something, in some investment, then it's we try to get the revenue stream secured. We can provide fixed financing up to 30 years. So they can go from 10, 15, 20, 30 years. What else can I say? I know I got about 10 minutes, and one of the projects that we finance is OCN, and they're going to be talking next. And so they'll talk about, I guess, how they worked with us, which was pretty painless, pretty seamless. But I think it's really important to understand the risks that are associated with this if you're going into an equity position. If you're building and owning like 100% like what they did, it's a bit different. It's a bit different. But whatever you want, if you want to work with us, we will work with you for whatever level of ownership that you want into these projects. We are there to help you along the way to understand, to point out the risks, and to make sure that that your project is going to end up being as successful as possible. One of the other elements when you're getting into this is to try to understand when you're going to actually start generating money, because that's really important for if you're getting financing. It's really important to start paying back your loans and financing, because your financing costs start on day one that you actually take out a loan. So it's really important to know when you can generate revenues. And if you're going into with a partner, and the partner in a lot of cases usually holds the license. And to me, that's the most critical component of any type of venture like this, is who has the license. And in most cases, you have a partner that has the license. And so equally important is the supply and service agreement that's attached to that, to make sure that that it's depending on what equity level you're going in, it's really important to make sure that you have some safeguards for yourself. And one of the things that First Nations are usually doing with the partnership is putting in most of the equity that I've seen. And so, and the equity usually goes to constructing the building. And the buildings, as you can see, are pretty enormous, and they're pretty costly. And so just to really make sure that the risk attached with construction risks are looked at in case you're going over budget, you're going over time. Those are really important things to consider. I think I'm going to leave it there because I'd like to generate more questions, but I just want to mention again that we are a really viable option for First Nations that are looking at financing these type of projects, because we actually can provide equity financing, and that's one of the easiest ways to get into this. And you'll hear the chief from OCN talk about this, about their project and how it works with us. So I'm going to leave it there and leave more time for questions. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm clearly not going to do a lot of introductions because I'm having a little mouth problems. We'll have Alex come up next, and we'll let him tell you about what he's been up to, being a crusader, security, so on. He's got quite the history.
Okay, thank you. Is it working? No. My name is Alex Abellan. I'm the founder of National Access Cannabis. We are a medical marijuana clinic that was opened, well, the model started about 10 years ago. We focus mostly on risk reduction, health awareness. The most important thing, this is a new opportunity for everyone. The legalization of cannabis has given us an opportunity to do business with the government on our side, of course, but I always thought, even back 10 years ago, we were fighting about our rights, but it's not just about your rights, it's about your responsibility. So to me, I mean, farming, there's a lot of opportunity with that, but where the opportunity really exists is that this is a new frontier. It's a new consciousness shift. We are being spoken truth for the first time. We know that cannabis is a medicine first, and of course, recreationally, it should be done responsibly and mindfully. So National Access Cannabis was developed with that in mind, but more importantly, it was when we first opened up our first clinic, people were coming to us and talking to us about their lives more so than even their physicians. And what I realized is that because this is a new beginning and nobody knows what the legalization is going to look like moving forward, this is a moment where we get to create it. There's not any other industry I can think of where something just is brand new, nobody knows where it's going or how to even develop it. But I'm thankfully, we're working with the Indigenous group, which I believe are the people who really care about the community, even more so than the government themselves. They're making some really big headway in this industry. And I just want to remind people that we should be doing things responsibly and mindfully. So investing in clinics as well in your communities and educating people, getting people off opiates, cannabis. I'm not going to get and take up too much time and explain to you how it works with the endogenous system and the CB receptors in our bodies. But I do feel strongly that I can say with my experience that cannabis is an alternative to everything else. So come into this industry and just realize that you're making a difference in your community, because in the end, it's going to change lives. It really does. So thank you very much. And I'm going to now introduce my friend Richard Ben. He's come all the way from Victoria, BC. We're working with a clinic in Victoria where we're doing research, getting people off opiates and other drugs as well. And Richard is into farming, CBD, which I'm sure most of you know is a medicinal property found in cannabis. Okay, Richard. Thank you. 6 seconds. Does this work? Check, 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 welfare check. Okay. First, I'll say thank you to the Creator for the privilege of being here. I'll make one reference to some of the history that we live with today. Columbus left on a journey where he didn't know that he was going or where he was going. He was doing it on borrowed money. And when he got back, he didn't know where he'd been. So that's what I feel like here. I'm here with borrowed money. I'll probably forget half or more of what I've heard. And some of the people I've met has been very valuable to me.
And I've been asked to, one more thank you to the Golden Lake First Nation for allowing us to enjoy their territory unceded, and that the benefit of these things here and the cannabis and hemp industry will help and strengthen our sovereign ties to the land and to the creator-gifted plants and of healing that we all have, and not just us, but throughout the world. The discussion of maximized investment, I am neither an expert nor an authority nor an appointed person to speak on behalf of any particular facet of the industry. All I know is that in the Indigenous communities, we're coming out of a dark time, and we have an opportunity to, as Alex pointed out, we have the opportunity to take the reins that we have, not only as an inherent gift that we've got from the Creator, but there's a discussion of rights and those kinds of things. And my understanding of rights is that for each right that we have, there's a commensurate responsibility that requires our attention and decision-making. Because the worst decision I think that we can make is not to make a decision at this point. The idea of maximize investment, if the ultimate goal or objective is to foster a healthy community that's sustainable, and not the sustainable that we find used by 4- and 2-year governments that plague our land. We have to look at not just 7 generations, but why not a 500-year history or a 500-year horizon that we aim for. And I believe the cannabis industry and the hemp plant that is also a part of that gift that the Creator has given us. The medicines alone would be worth the time and effort for our people to be involved. The involvement should not be based on one small facet, as glittering as it may be, whether it be financial, what any other benefit that you could find from the being involved in the industry as it exists right now. Money should be only one metric. I think the most important metric is how are we going to involve our people from the beginning to the end, from seed to the final product. And the final product need not be the flower for smoking, which I've enjoyed for over 50 years. I'm 70 years old. And I've yet to run into a hard drug that had anything that I was interested in. So using it as a medicine, I'm a 7-year thriver from residential school experience directly. They got me at 5 and threw me out at 17. I was too yappy. And since that time, I've watched our people struggle with the idea of an economy or wealth. And I'm here to tell you that the mother and father that or the parent figures that I had in residential school from the time I was 5 till the time I was 9, and again from 13 to 17, the people that were supposed to be my guardians, my parents, the people that were giving me guidance and direction, were people that had to take 3 vows in order to belong to the organizations, the Catholic organizations that they belonged to. And those 3 vows, as any Catholic in here will know, is they take the vow of obedience, they take the vow of poverty, and the stupidest one of all, they take the vow of abstinence. So in that environment is what I grew up in. And so what I've done in my life and working at still today is that I want to break that cycle of poverty which plagues our communities. And it's an unpopular subject, but it needs to be talked about, because the weakest part of our community is where our weakest link is, and where our weakest link is where it'll break us apart. Doesn't matter what other facet we may have concentrated on and excelled at. If the human competency in our communities is not commensurate with the task at hand, We have to trust the Creator to provide that, either by way of consultancy or outsiders that we bring in to help us get to the place where we need to be sustainable. And I believe that the cannabis industry is just in the embryonic stages of the type of product that will be developed with the modern technology that's available to us now, that we can extract and purify and use all parts of the plant, from the fiber to the THC and the CBDs that are available that we use as medicine. And I just wanted to make one plug for one individual today, and his name is Chester Gerard, and he was sitting there. He's probably eating. Anyway, Chester Gerard, he refers to himself as Dr. Bud. He spent 6 years in jail for growing 3,000 pounds of medicine for one of the Anishinaabe communities that asked him to help. And he spent the 6 years in jail starting in 2007. And if he was doing it now, he would be considered a hero, not a criminal. And so Dr. Bud, one of the things that oh, there he is. Sorry to interrupt your lunch here, buddy. He has brought to my knowledge the fact that the strain with which you get associated with will be your resume. In our company, we like to say that our product is our resume, and it should be for everybody. It needs to be safe, it needs to be pure, and it needs to be readily accessible and affordable. And Dr. Bud has probably one of the most enviable seed banks, if not in Canada, in the world, for medical cannabis, hemp. So as you make your decisions in the direction where you're going, I believe you need to be appraise yourself as much as of what's available. The licensing side of it I find to be a bit onerous, particularly when we already have the right to do what the Creator's gifted us with, and the medicine side of it, the medical side of it, has been deemed legal in this country long prior to the legalization of marijuana for recreational use. And I think anytime you go to recreation, I think you're in danger of going over the line of how respectful the Creator expects us to be to the resources that He provides for us, for a good health, for a good community, and for a good earth. So with that, I'll say thank you. Oh, and I'm speaking on behalf, or instead of Wade McAdams, who's taken, I believe, some very brave and bold steps into the what's possible in the industry. Raven CBD products are who he represents, and with that, I thank you for your patience and listening, and I look forward to a sustainably wealthy Indigenous community in Canada. And with that, I just wanted to lay out a real quick caveat. When I use the word Commonwealth, the British people used that word to indicate how much wealth they could accumulate and bring back to England so that they could get voted in by their constituents, their citizens. Commonwealth in the Indigenous community, which was outlawed in British Columbia, and I think the last time in 1926, where potlatching and those kinds of things were. Indigenous Commonwealth was the ability of a person to accumulate the things that he wanted to give to his community. And I think this is where this needs to go. This industry can, from its primary to its secondary to its tertiary processing value-added processes, we can employ not only all of our own, but a whole bunch more. And with that, I thank you for your time. Merci.
Thank you so much. We're tracking on time. In fact, I'm very happy that we're hopefully going to have about 20 minutes to take questions from everybody in the audience, because after all, this is your forum. If you don't think of any, Health Canada sent me about 4,000 questions last night and said, if you could help knock some of these off for us, we'd appreciate it. So I do have questions, in case you don't come up with them. But it's a great honor to introduce our next speaker, Chief Christian Sinclair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. this the change there? Okay, thank you. I just found the watch here. In Cree country, if you find it, it's yours. No, just kidding. That's my clock, I guess. Okay, danse, Honiganu Christian Sinclair, ni Sinigasan, Opaskwayak Cree Nation Ote, Nimanani Tene Mamapyak Ota Algonquin. My name is Christian Sinclair, Chief of the Opaskwayak Cree Nation. I don't use the title Chief, that's a European word. I use Oniganu, which in Cree means the one in front or the one who leads. And just welcoming you all gathering here at this meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Nation. So with that, I thank those who are hosting us and for the organizers for putting this together. We're just reminiscing earlier when I first went to my first cannabis conference about 2 years ago or a year, 9 months ago in Winnipeg. Myself and my colleagues were the only First Nations people in that audience. The rest were all Muscowpetung or non-Aboriginal. So to see a gathering like this of its kind for all Indigenous people is something very nice to see, knowing that we need to be a part of this new economy as we move forward. And just like my colleague said, just by coincidence, I just want to, and you'll hear it as I put this story together, how I relate to some of these individuals here. I'm from the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, Hanamaka Pimato Ye Goak, is basically that which carries us forward, one of our slogans in Opaskwayak Cree Nation. We are located about 6 hours north of Winnipeg, Manitoba, right near a town called the Paw, Manitoba. If you look at it, it's almost right in the heart of Canada or the heart of Turtle Island. Our history, we were signatory to Treaty 5 in 1876. We were known as the Paw Indian Band originally, and then just in the last 20 years, we had changed our name back to our own language, which is the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, which we will be changing soon to Opaskwayak Ininawak. Opaskwayak means the trees on a high bluff or a high hill. Our governance, we have an Oniganu and a vice Oniganu, which is a chief and a vice chief, and the Oneshchagawak, or the council, which it was previously known as. We have 6,200 members, and about 3,800 are living on the First Nation, structured like any other governing society. We have our economic arm, and what we have done as a nation is we've separated our business from our politics and our administration from our politics, so that as we're given direction by the people, basically inverting the European governing system where the people are the boss, the management delivers what they need to, and we're the chief and council at the bottom, and I'm at the very bottom of the heap. So basically hearing what the people want, we give that directive to our management and they deliver on it based on their policies and procedures. So their corporate objectives is basically to create wealth or commonwealth, as was said earlier. Some of our investments or holdings include hotels, retail, gas bars, sports trading shops, concrete mix, etc. The list goes on, and just recently we've now gotten into the business of cannabis just in the last 18 months. And what's interesting is how we got into this. When I was elected in September of 2016, Opaskwayak was on the verge of third party. Technically should have been in third party, but because of our size and scope, the government worked with us to keep us hanging on the edge. And then our corporation was 60 days away from bankruptcy. So coming in and recognizing that in our community there was also the shutdown of the local paper mill, and the rail line had shut down from the Paw to Churchill. So call it the perfect storm, but as I said, it's a crisis you don't want to have go to waste. So we took full advantage of it and basically analyzed everything within our community. And this is where, doing some preliminary research before being elected, I came across the First Nations Financial Authority. And they were a blessing in disguise for the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, because we didn't have two nickels to rub together. Companies wouldn't even give us any product. We had to pay cash up front if we could scrape some of that together. But with the FNFA, as was stated earlier, what they do is they analyze your own source revenue. And in the case of Opaskwayak, with having tax income from leasing of lands, revenue from our various operations, as you can see, gaming, gas rebates, etc. What we did is we took just the gaming revenues of our VLT center and our tobacco rebate, and that gave us a number that they took and multiplied by a factor of 12. So going from being in the biggest deficit in the history of our community to having a war chest of $56 million, we quickly mobilized and began to put that to work. So we consolidated our high interest debt. As was stated earlier, their rates are below prime. You can amortize it up to 25, 30 years with no collateral. So the banks have come forward, and I told one of the banks when they were basically giving my team a verbal beating was that I said, we'll fix this problem. It's not of our making, but as a new government, we'll fix it. And I guarantee you right now, 1 year from today, the Bank of Opaskwayak Cree Nation will take care of itself. And sure enough, that has happened, where the banks are now clamoring to try and get business from us. But we go through FNFA, and they've been a saving grace. So for any First Nations who are out there having financial challenges, there's a solution sitting here right in front of you, and it's worked really well. And like I said, it's been a blessing for Opaskwayak Cree Nation. But what we did is we took that model of what they're able to provide, and then we looked at cannabis, keeping in mind cannabis was still illegal almost, 24 months ago, 18 months ago, or less than a year ago it was illegal. And we were already starting to explore it when you saw the video where the Prime Minister, as well as Minister Philpott and Minister Wilson, Judy Raybould, stated nationally and internationally that cannabis was going to become legal in Canada, and that they specifically said Indigenous people will be part of it. We heard that as Opaskwayak, so we sent our team out along with myself and started to explore what is cannabis about, what is this business about, recognizing that all my cousins were driving around fancy cars and they didn't have any jobs, like most of you. Just kidding. So we said, okay, this is something that's going to work because we know the stories of how big it is in the black market. So we quickly started to understand the business. We looked at the LP side, our licensed producer, and analyzed the whole supply chain to see where the least amount of risk was with the least amount of investment with the highest return. And we found out very quickly that the retail sector was where it was going to be at. So as I go into the presentation here, we did an assessment through our economic arm, PBDC. And what I did is I pulled all the council members off from the previous government, and we recruited 3 non-band members to our board, 4 band members, so that there was a capacity opportunity from the expertise from the outside, as well as a cultural awareness from the outside. One of our board members is actually Burn Christmas from Member 2, who helped turn the fortunes of Member 2 around. So we want to learn from best practices and incorporate them into our community, and we've been able to turn our ship around in a matter of 18 months from being near bankrupt to making record revenues and doing a new way of business, as you'll see as I go forward here. What we've done is, and it was stated earlier by some earlier presenters, is the money that we generate from these investments is not to go line the pockets of our management or the leadership. Every cent of it goes back into the community, and we're reinvesting it back into a language revitalization, recognizing the fact that it's the International Year of Indigenous Languages. We're investing in infrastructure, housing strategies, youth programming, recreation programming, health care for elders, people suffering from diabetes, etc. So it's part of our comprehensive community plan that we're designing and developing over the next 25 to 30 years. So it's all tying in together with our economic strategy, the comprehensive community plan, and ultimately our economic strategy, which we're just rolling out this month. So with National Access Cannabis, we came across this company, and for those of you who are out there, you may know Chuck Raffici, who is considered the grandfather or the godfather of cannabis in Canada. He was instrumental in really lobbying and pushing this to make it become legal in Canada. He was actually a co-founder of Cannabis Wheat, which is now known as Canopy or Wheat on the stock exchange. He sold out his shares and started his own company, which was part of National Access Cannabis. And through Alex Abellan here, he's actually the original founder of National Access Cannabis. Met one of our board members. They made a deal and bought him out, and then he's now, I guess, a passive investor, but a major shareholder of National Access Cannabis as well. So it's interesting just seeing these 2 gentlemen sitting on each side of me here that have become part of our overall economic strategy. And on a side note, the gentleman to my far left is actually a former military member of the PPCLI, a former veteran, as well as myself. So it's interesting how we're all collaborating by design here and how things happen by chance. But with this investment, we made $3 million. At the time, we didn't know. We actually became the largest private shareholder at just over 10%. We recovered our initial investment in less than a year. We've paid off the original investment already. I don't know if FNFA likes that because we pay our loans off so quickly. And right now, based on some of the strategic selling of those shares, we're still one of the largest private shareholders at 8.4%. We ensured that the company we invested in shared our values as an Indigenous organization, that there was a high level of education incorporated into the program that we share with our members and anywhere we set up our retail operations. and that they shared our values as Indigenous people, knowing that it's not there to become instantly wealthy, but that we got to grow and build together as a company, and ensuring our communities benefit from the educational side. Because when we brought this forward, as many of you know, it's a topic of stigma and negativity because of the war on drugs that's been there since 1920 by the U.S. government. And of course, Canada adopted that. But as we get rid of that stigma slowly but surely, and it's happening, more people are coming out of the woodwork. And when we brought it to our leadership, the elders, I thought it was going to be an uphill battle with them. And every single one of them shared a story that in their family, somebody was using it to treat cancer, diabetes, lupus, you name it. And the fact that it was now becoming legal, they had no problem sharing those stories. And when our council members went to vote, each of them had a story, someone in their family using it that had to hide behind closed doors because it was illegal at the time. So when we passed it, it was passed unanimously, and then we took it to the community and have been educating our community on a monthly basis ever since. So as was stated earlier by Seven Leaf, it's a matter of communication. That's the secret to success, keeping your people informed at all times. Right now with our operation, we have 25 dispensaries across Canada, which makes us the largest retail operator in Canada and potentially even in the US. And we actually have plans to roll out approximately 53 by the end of this summer, or by 2020, depending on the jurisdictions we're setting up. And the challenge is because there's a shortage of cannabis across the country. So this is where there's a great opportunity for those of you who are considering it to get in on the LP side of it, the licensed producer side. With the creation of Opaskwayak NAC Investment Limited Partnership, we had to force ourselves to move very quickly, because from the day we looked at this opportunity to the day we signed the deal took 45 days. And for some of you in the Indian country, business moves slow like molasses in a lot of cases, but we had to move our community and move it fast and move at the speed of business, because that's the reality of business as it is today, especially in a new and emerging business such as cannabis. So with that, today we are able, as soon as we get a license approved by a jurisdiction, from start of opening the doors, tearing down the walls, to building and opening the doors, it takes us 3 weeks. Originally it was 3 months, so we now got it down to a science. This is just one of the views of one of our retail operations inside. This is actually from our community on the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, which was the First Nation legal operating dispensary under the legal framework of Canada, recognizing that there was other First Nations that opened theirs under their own sovereignty and jurisdiction, which we respect. And as we say, whatever works for any First Nation, by all means, go for it, because there's room for everybody. This is just how we operate, the administration process, operations, and the industry. Just a high-level overview of how everything is built right in. So that, as we said, when we approach this, we didn't approach it as opening one retail on our own First Nation. We took a different approach by becoming a major player publicly traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So we have to follow certain rules and regulations in order to maintain good standing there, but to also look at it not by just being a rung on the ladder. When we negotiated with the company, we said we wanted to be an owner of the corporate ladder, which would allow us to own a piece of every retail operation opening up across Canada. So we have 25 open today, which we own a piece of, and all of that revenue flows back to the Opaskwayak Cree Nation. Since that time, with the monies that we've invested in, again, going through the First Nations Financial Authority, we made a $35 million investment because we were growing so fast and the company needed more money. So we borrowed through FNFA, $35 million. And we used that money to invest in opening up more retail operations across Canada. With that $3 million, we actually made it all back and then some in a matter of 3.5 months. So we paid off that loan in 3 months and made a nice tidy profit from that investment. So $35 million, we made about $3.5 million back into our coffers. We've then used that and actually reinvested that into some international plays, which you'll see shortly. But what this allows us to do now is become the Goldman Sachs of specialty financing for those that want to get into the business. So for those of you who are trying to figure out where to borrow money from, as was stated earlier by Seven Leaf, we saw that as an opportunity. So we bought into a company that approached us, seeing how we were making moves on the stock exchanges. And they had never seen anyone make a bold move like that. So they came to us and invited us to join their company. We bought in and we have a seat on the board of that as well. For those of you that do invest, this will be going public in the next 2 months. So by mid-April, we'll be going public. So keep your eye on this particular company. As well, there is opportunities for those of you that do have money that you want to put to work and to invest. This is a company that's actually going global. So if you're interested, come and see me after, and we'll be more than happy to sit with you on that. And this has already started to make deals in Canada. We're figuring out the solution in the U.S. because until it's legal federally in the U.S., we can't participate directly in that economy. What is Trichome? It's basically a credit-based capital solution to provide financing to companies who want to operate in the legal cannabis framework. It provides flexible and creative financing options, and is focused right now on Canada and other parts of the world minus the US, but we're getting that piece in order shortly. We became strategic partners in August 16, 2018. I was appointed 2 weeks later on the board, and every investment we make with any company, we ensure that we get a seat on the board, and we bring a lot of strategic value as First Nations. So when you're sitting here, companies recognize that as First Nations or as Indigenous communities, you can play a strategic role and maximize that to your full potential so that you can incorporate that into the strategy of the company you're working with. We went into a private placement of $15 million. The company is already valued at $60 million in less than, 8 months and growing. So we see the potential valuation of this company growing between $700 million and $1 billion within the next 3 to 5 years. The company moves towards investing in specialty finance opportunities and has been already. And this new move will create general working capital purposes. So in a sense, we've used FNFA money to become a specialty finance company for the mainstream at large on an international basis. So you can see the synergies and how they work together. Alternate Health, this is another publicly traded company. We signed an agreement with them in December of 2018. I went down to California, Los Angeles, and met with the proprietors. They're publicly traded, so we invested $1.5 million on a favored investment option, and basically give us 3.1% of the initial capital raise, but we also have a seat on the board waiting until it becomes legal in the U.S. So I'll be working with that company very closely as they expand within the U.S., California first, and then other legal states. And we'll be administering that through our economic arm of PBDC. So what they do is they're headquartered out of Los Angeles, and you can see the 4 key pillars. They're based on research, education, medical compliance, CBD production, clinical laboratory testing. And what's interesting about this, similar to Seven Leaf, is we basically coordinated a number of large growers in Northern California. And they're all what they call craft growers, are very specialty growers. They've been compared to the Bordeaux region of France as it relates to wine. This is the Bordeaux region of the world as it relates to cannabis. There's thousands of growers there, and we've actually brought a co-op of them all together under one roof. And what that's going to allow us to do is become the largest grower, distributor, and retailer in the state of California, which is our beachhead to now roll out into the U.S. where it's legal in states across the United States. So they're headquartered, the growing operation is out of Northern California called the Humboldt region. Just a show of hands, how many people have heard of the Humboldt region? Okay, there's a few of you here, and you'll know, as I know, that that's the premier growing area. It's known as the Emerald Triangle. So Opaskwayak Cree Nation is now a major player in there. They've been growing since the 1960s when they hit out. A lot of veterans went out, hit the hippie age, and started growing their product there. This area of Northern California is also known as Humboldt Avenue Kush Company, and in the Emerald Triangle. They're famous for winning international awards for the quality of their product, and that's what it's going to come down to. When you get into the business of growing, you can grow 1 million pounds or you can grow 100,000 pounds, but the consumer knows that they're going to want quality, not quantity. They want quality, and they're going to be able to make that distinction very easily. The company requires all products to be tested and packaged and sold out of Humboldt County, and we actually have it all geared towards Los Angeles. So that's the first part of my presentation. I'll now go to the second part of the presentation. And this is going to give you now some real insight into what Opaskwayak Cree Nation is doing. Under our strategic investment of Trichome, which is a subsidiary of Origin House. Has anybody here heard of Origin House? If you haven't, you're going to be soon. And this is basically the biggest player in California, which makes it one of the biggest players in the world. A product becomes a brand by owning real estate in the minds of consumers. So with the Meta brand in Canada, we have 25 locations. We'll be up to 50 across Canada, and we are going to be rolling out a retail strategy in the U.S. Right away. We're in the midst of doing that right now, and we are working with a number of U.S. tribes already. So as you can see in the four corners, you got P&G, their number of products that they have, Crest, Oral-B, etc. In the bottom there, you have Origin House. These are just some of the brands that are carried under our company. The legal cannabis market currently lacks dominant brands, and what you're seeing roll out in the state of California is what's going to start rolling out across the U.S. and into Canada. So we'll have some of those being plugged into our retail operations when the edibles becomes legal later this year. So if you win California, you win the world, as they say, and we're right in the midst of building our foundation there. We've internalized and accelerated our growth plans there, and we're now replicating the blueprint into other states and replicating part of that into Canada here come this fall. These are just some numbers with 450 dispensaries right now throughout the U.S., 6 directly with the company we have, and these are some of the brands you see in the bottom right-hand corner, 50-plus brands that are part of our family of distribution. So we'll be producing on one side of it 50,000 pounds every quarter to as high as 200,000 pounds. So we're going to be growing on a large scale throughout the U.S. Through California. So we're building our foundation, which was phase one, building on the world's largest, most evolved, sophisticated cannabis market in the world. And like I said earlier, if you win California, you win the market and you win the world. So we're really building our footprint there right now. And it's a massive opportunity that's growing. California itself is going to be much bigger than Canada combined. So our distribution here, we have a number of distributors that come through Origin House in the middle of the apex there, and then down below we distribute it down into the retail sellers throughout California, and we'll be having our own brand. So Meta is positioning to become a major brand in the United States as well. Just during our buildup of our phase from distributing to 450 dispensaries, the feedback on building our model, making it more efficient, brand support, and basically getting what the consumer wants and weeding out the weeds, if you will, no pun intended, and focusing on the brand winners. So brand support infrastructure, we have that all in place now. Our second operation will be rolling out of Northern California in the beginning of March. So the financial power of our platform, as you can see, the growth, 83% just between quarters in the US and California. And you're going to see that number grow again in the first quarter, second quarter of 2019. So it's already started to snowball. So if you're not in the game, it's only just starting in California. If you can see what's happening there, this is what's starting. We're basically on the beginning end on the left side of that scale in Canada. So there's a lot of room for growth. Internalize and accelerate, that's where we're now moving right now, very aggressively and progressively. And internalizing our brand support infrastructure, so we're actually buying out companies as well, and this is where Trichome comes in, is if you become an investor in Trichome, you become an investor of all these companies, or owners of these companies as well, indirectly through strategic passive investments. Internalizing and accelerating, that's what we're in the midst of doing right now. And identifying and acquiring the global brands of tomorrow. So these brands that we solidify and build in the US will be rolling into Canada, and eventually we'll be rolling those out internationally into other markets that we're already positioning for already. So as was stated earlier by one of the presenters, you have the opportunity to be local, national, or international, and we're already going international. So I'll be attending a major conference with my friend Alex Abellan in Spain next month, as well as attending a meeting with a number of tribes in the US in the beginning of March. So award-winning brands to grow, and that's what it's really going to come down to, is branding and the quality of your product. You can grow all the cannabis you want, but if it's garbage, it's garbage. Nobody's going to want that. So you really got to step up your game and get the best quality cultivators, growers, artisans that are going to give you the product that people want. And we're seeing it on our shelves right now. So we already are, with the Meta brands, we're eliminating some of the brands that aren't selling as well, but we're putting our investments into ones that do sell, that the customer wants. So building a highly curated brand portfolio based on the statistics of what consumers are looking for. And again, that is what was said earlier by other presenters. We're not just in the business of flowers. We're diversifying into the accessories, from the vapes to the flowers, the oils, every product that's going to be developed and utilized as accessories to support the cannabis flower. We're already into that as Opaskwayak Cree Nation on an international scale. So delivering on our strategy, you see the growth here. There's a lot of room for growth, and it's going to keep growing over the next 10 years. So in order to make this grow, we just keep replicating this blueprint on a province-by-province basis, a state-by-state basis, and country-by-country basis. And that's the strategy that we have rolling out from Opaskwayak with our strategic partnerships. So bringing proven cannabis brands to a familiar market, currently featuring undifferentiated products. We just took out 180 Smoke, brought that under the brand, and through that, that's going to be a vehicle from the US side in through that company, and then ultimately through Meta. So replicating the blueprint over and over. The recipe works, the model of success works, so we're just snowballing and continuing to roll and build that out as we move forward on an international basis. And of course, building significant shareholder value. So that's why I said to you earlier, if you're looking to invest on a passive side, you can invest in Meta, or you can invest in Trichome, or you can invest in Origin House. Opaskwayak Cree Nation is involved in every one of these on a major scale. And this is just some capital structuring of prices. So with Trichome, as I said earlier, we're just getting ready. We're just at the starting point of view, and this is where Opaskwayak got in at 25 cents with Meta Cannabis. It's gone as high as $1.32. It's trading roughly at about 65, 70 cents, give or take on the day. But we see that growing to $3 to $5 in the next couple of years. So add that up based on our share value, it's going to add up to a lot of wealth creation. That's just on Meta. That's not even counting Trichome or Origin House or two other plays that we're going to be announcing in the next 90 days. So that's basically my presentation here. So and I'll take my watch. No.
Oh, my heart's racing. I don't think it's the gummy bears, but you've got some great information here. We have the motivation, the success stories of what these people have done. But you also have a gift you got. They gave me a gift. One of the biggest obstacles to everybody moving forward and getting on this train is what? Money. You don't have the funding. Excuse me? Can I introduce you to my friends over here? But what's even better and why clients come to us is the value add. This is like Shark Tank. I mean, these guys lend you money, but guess what? They're in the business you want to be in. They're killing it. What excuses have you got now? Think of your grandchildren. You should be so excited that they're able to get you money at a great rate, and they don't want your firstborn for it. They'll keep you from stumbling. What I've heard here is tremendous. It helps me tremendously because it'll help me to say, yes, there's other financing. But another key interesting point here is guess who wants you to get in this business? The government. Who else needs to tell you? Me? They're killing it. You're here to find out about it. We're 6 years into this. I have a saying, if it's to be, it's up to me. Take this, take it back to your community. There's no more excuses. You should all be very excited about the possibilities listening to what you've heard here today. I mean, my legs are literally shaking. People willing to lend you money and bring the expertise. That's very rare. So please, reach out to these people. Talk to them. They're not going to lend money to Bob in his garage, obviously. But they're willing to, and you'll benefit just from talking to them. So if you have questions, reach out to the panelists. Speak to them. If you have any other questions, reach out to me. My time is yours. Thank you so much. And I think, golly gee, that's it. Thank you so much.
Ernie.
You did very awesome now. Jake? Okay, we are on time. That was an excellent panel. Opaskwayak Cree Nation and Chief Sinclair. Obviously, we witnessed here again the stellar approach of those that understand and have an astute sense of what this business opportunity looks like. And again, we commend and we acknowledge them. And again, sharing of that information is certainly something that this conference is about. So I want to thank everybody for their time. I'm going to ask we've got a 15-minute break. We are on time, but I'm going to ask Jake Linklater to come up here and just introduce a couple of his friends and colleagues who basically are from the indigenous community in Jamaica. And I just, Jake, if you can, you see these gentlemen that are doing some indigenous cannabis work in other parts of the globe, and Jake wanted to give these guys an opportunity to be acknowledged, and just so you know who they are. Miigwech.
Thanks, Isidore. Yes, over to the my left over here is a colleague of ours through a strategic partnership and joint venture in Jamaica. His name is Ras Ive, and his colleague Hopeton Malabre. And if you guys want to come up and just give yourselves a quick introduction, but these are a group of folks that we are working with to create a global indigenous platform. So, Ive.
Yes, I just want to say give thanks for being here. My name is Ras Ayazi. Being a long-time advocate, I've been invited in Jamaica. The laws were amended in 2015, so I was asked to be a part of the Cannabis Licensing Authority, which is the body responsible for regulating and monitoring the industry. I've been all over in Israel at the UN, just coming from Panama at Canatech, and Boston with Harvard and the University of Calgary. But I just want to say, being here, very encouraging to see First Nation people coming together. And it's one word that I come with: unity, U-N-I-T-Y. The importance of First Nation people from all over the world coming together. That's part of my aim and objective to work to help ensuring that. Because I think it's only with people, First Nation and indigenous groups coming together to defend what is there, claiming what is there, that you eventually get what is yours. So again, I give thanks for being here. One love, one aim, one Jah, one destiny. Keep fighting for what is yours. Give thanks.
Hello, I'm Opaskwayak Malard, presently living here in Canada, but from Jamaica. As the great Bob Marley say, stand up for your rights.